We'll continue a bit further with our videos on education. I want to attempt to define what art is, explain what art is. And then after that, we can circle back and remember and reinforce why the proper approach to education is essential for peacemakers. But first, let's turn to the fine arts. What are the fine arts? Well, traditionally there are 7 of them. They include literature, as in fiction and non-fiction writing, poetry, which is a special thing unto itself, painting, sculpture, music, dance, and architecture.
And drama.
Now, drama is a combination, isn't it? So we've got drama and film as well.
That's right.
So what I have basically laid out in that 7 is the kind of primary art form, but then there are derivative art forms that come from that. For example, drama is usually based on a literary art form. There might be a performance of Romeo and Juliet. It was originally written down as a play by Shakespeare. We count that as a literary art form, but then it becomes dramatised, and that becomes its own form of art, the drama. How about film? Well, very often you start with a script, don't you? What are the ingredients of film? There can be music, okay? Music gets imported into film. Sometimes it's composed specifically for film. There has been some magnificent musical scores that are composed specifically for films. So a film becomes a secondary art form that utilises a primary art form. Then it's utilising also the literary art form.
Twin Peaks is an example of that.
Yes, in the sense of having customised music. They had a composer, Angelo Badalamenti, compose the music for that.
He sure did.
That television series, Twin Peaks.
Did an excellent job.
He did a magnificent job. So what else does film draw upon? It draws upon the visual arts sometimes in framing, and it draws upon the literary art, and it draws on the musical art. It can draw on the art of dance as well. It may draw on all the arts. So film is sort of like the ultimate synthetic art form. But I always go back to the building blocks. So the building blocks, if you're to create in one of the primary modalities of the fine arts, how do you know you're on the right track? We have to ask the question, what is art? And I know a lot of people have asked that question. And sometimes artists have asked that question. Now, it's not the job of the artist to answer that question. It's more the job of the philosopher, the aesthetician. Aesthetics is meant to be a branch of philosophy. When you start analysing what's going on when art is being created and asking what the nature of art is. But some artists have been very self-conscious and have tried to explain what process they go through. One artist was T.S. Eliot, the poet, who sort of launched the modernism movement in poet in the 20th century. He wrote poems like The Wasteland and The Love Song of J. Alfred Prufrock, and play Murder in the Cathedral, he had a big oeuvre, and he had some definite ideas about what art was. So he did the philosophy as well as creating original art. Leo Tolstoy was another artist, great novelist in the Russian tradition, War and Peace, for example. And he had definite aesthetic ideas as well. For him, the artist had to infect the reader or the viewer with the emotion that was their condition of soul when they created the art. And that emotion has to be induced in the reader, and that reader would then have that emotion in common with other people appreciating the art and with the author of the art as well. It goes to the issue of the universality of the art. Ayn Rand, who wrote Atlas Shrugged and The Fountainhead and so on,
Excellent.
American author, 20th century. Not only was she a novelist, but she was a very, she wrote extensively on art, and her ideas on aesthetics can be found in a volume, which was a collection of essays I think she originally wrote, but it's called The Romantic Manifesto. And she captured a certain aspect of art. She saw it as the concretizing of a metaphysics. And this is an important aspect that we want to capture as well. But the way I want to approach the nature of art is to say that art has physical and metaphysical roots. The simplest way to think about it is that we're seduced by the senses into an encounter with embodied meaning. An analogy might be falling in love with a person. You see them, something appeals, just from the physical, just their appearance, their presence. And as you are drawn, attracted, you enter into the mystery of the meaning that that person incarnates and embodies. In other words, you become privy to their interior life. You get to know their soul. You get to find out whether they're beautiful on the inside as well as on the outside. You see my point?
Yeah, I do.
Mm-hmm.
Most
Now,
cases you're very disappointed.
Well, sometimes you can be very disappointed.
Yeah.
But similarly with art, because I think the analogy extends into this area as well, because you can be attracted to somebody superficially, and then as you get to know them, you can reach the conclusion that you two don't gel very well.
Or you can be repulsed by them.
You can actually be repulsed by what constitutes their soul.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. What their basic motivations and intentions and worldview are like.
That's right.
Similarly, you can be gratified superficially by an artwork when you first encounter it. But as you get to know it and explore what it's saying to you, you can say that, I repudiate the meaning that it's conveying. It does not agree with my worldview. That's not how I look at life. I can appreciate its integrity as an artwork, and I think it does a very good job of conveying its meaning, but it's not for me. So it's possible to acknowledge something as a great work of art and yet not actually like it. Your favourite works of art are likely to be esteemed as great works of art that you happen to like. So, I say that there are physical and metaphysical roots to art. There's a sensory, sensual side, and there's a metaphysical side, and they come together. Now, the Greek word for sense perception gives us the word aesthetic. And there can be confusion here, because aesthetics is often used to denote a branch of philosophy as something that is thought through philosophically, whereas really, aesthetic etymologically has to do with sense perception and the attraction and the seduction by beauty. So something appeals to the senses about a statue, about a painting, about a piece of music. It arrests you, it catches you.
Riveted.
Yes. And so at this level, it's about the delectation of beauty through the senses. And you just want to be in its company.
Absolutely.
How often have you walked through an art gallery and most of the works in there don't really impress you, you just walk on by. And then suddenly,
A lot
boom,
of times.
yeah, there's a particular painting that stops you in your tracks.
Not many
And-
people have the ability to do that.
Well,
That's why it's rare.
sometimes it's like it's winking at you. It stops you and you just want to sit in its presence for a few hours. We hear of lots of situations like that. This is what happened when Sigmund Freud encountered Michelangelo's Moses, the statue.
Oh, his
In-
statues were amazing.
Is it St. Peter in Chains in Rome, the church? And Freud was just sort of wrapped in it for hours on end, and he wanted to know why it had so much sway over his mind, so much arresting power. He was intrigued by it, and he wanted to delve into the meaning of the statue, because every work of art embodies meaning. And it came from the metaphysics that Michelangelo was operating on. Now, an artist doesn't need to consciously be operating on a metaphysic, but it needs to flow through in their sense of life,
Reminds me
subconsciously. Now, Freud went away and he wrote a long essay about this statue. I think he imposed more of his own metaphysics onto the statue than was in Michelangelo's original intention. But nevertheless, it stopped him, and first of all, because of its beautiful, sensible quality. So the art appeals to the senses. This is one side of it.
And he probably captured something as well, which meant something. At that time when I was in Monaco, and I went to a church in the palace area,
Mm-hmm.
and there was a statue of a nun,
Mm-hmm.
a famous nun. I wish I remembered her name.
Mm-hmm.
But she had this serene look on her face. It was riveting. I couldn't stop staring at it.
Yeah.
And it was because of the facial expression.
And before you begin to analyse it, you're riveted by it. There's something about the expression. You can see it in a statue, you can see it in a painting. Or it may be a phrase in a poem, and boom, it's like, wow, music to my ears. But it may be the way that a writer expresses themselves. It may be the cadences of a declamation of an orator from ancient or modern times.
It hits you
It hits you,
where you live. Yeah.
and you stop, and you have to give it your attention. it seduces you in a way. It draws you in. So, going back to my example of Freud, he had to try and figure out why this statue had such a profound effect on him. And he ended up imagining that Moses was just at the point, he had the tablets under his arms. He came down from the mountain and he could see his head was turned off to the side and his leg was cocked. And he could see them worshipping the golden calf and he was furious. And in the Bible story, he smashes the tablets with the 10 Commandments on them. But Freud is imagining that Michelangelo is trying to depict something subversive here, that Moses is actually staying his hand and he's going to try and transcend this impulse to smash the tablets, but he's looking at basically in contempt at the people who are worshipping this idol.
A quarter moment.
Yeah. But there doesn't seem to be any reason to believe that that is the case. Nevertheless, that's the explanation he gave.
That's what he got out of it.
Yes. We like to build the story and the backstory behind a work of art. We have 5 senses, as I keep saying, and the fine arts appeal to the various senses. Visual art to vision, painting and sculpture, but sculpture also to touch. How often do you want to touch a beautiful piece of sculpture? And music to the auditory sense, because we're dealing with vibrations of sound in mathematical ratios, melodies and harmonies. And they bypass our conscious thinking and go straight to the soul. But it comes to us through the portal of sense. And when it comes to dance, of course, there's the kinesthetic sense, but there's also sight. And when it comes to architecture, there's sight. And I don't know what other senses are involved, probably more. When it comes to literature, yes, it's the auditory sense, if the work is being read aloud, but it's also the conceptual sense, which is like a 6th sense, functioning through our imagination, whereby we create the story, we recreate the story in our imaginations. It's still coming to us. The well-chosen words on the page are evoking mental pictures, a mental drama, and so we're sensing it in that way. And then afterwards we can reflect and look for meaning. Because this is the other side of what makes an artwork an artwork. Embodied meaning.
Absolutely.
Now, an artist has to inhabit an artistic universe, said the art historian Arthur Danto, I believe. And in that universe, that artistic world, there are themes, ideas, and artists, and so on. And out of that comes a creation. T.S. Eliot said that a poet has to be conversant with the whole tradition of poetry. We think of poets as just capriciously throwing out their own individualistic thing. Not so for Eliot. Even in the most individualistic creation, it's not caprice. It's not departure from everybody else. It's not look at me, look at me, look at me. He says the poet is always trying to transcend himself and reach impersonality, such that even in the most unique poem, The tradition is exalted. So obviously, Eliot too is believing that the poet inhabits a poetic universe of other poetic creations, of poetic themes, of poetic techniques, of poets, and of what they've been trying to say about the human condition. And out of that, something precipitates anew into his poem, or into a contemporary poem, or into a poem that happens to be a poem du jour, that captures the zeitgeist, that is right for the time. And we can detail this even further by saying that art is the concretization of a metaphysical worldview. This worldview is trying to tell us something about ourselves. It's trying to tell us something about the universe. You know, a bit similar to what I said we could achieve with the trivium, the quadrivium. You study numbers, but ultimately, if you study them the right way, numbers and geometric shapes, they take you back to a knowledge of yourself and yourself in relation to the universe. Well, the metaphysical worldview that good art embodies, and embodies clearly and compellingly, tells you about yourself. Things like, can I achieve my goals in life or can I not? Am I a victim of circumstances? This universe that I inhabit, is it a benevolent universe? Is there a providential power in the universe that guides things for ultimate good? Or is this universe the habitation of evil forces hell-bent on destruction? Or will it just go the way of a heat death, entropy? Is there profound nihilism and pessimism baked into the universe that is communicated through the artist's metaphysic, be it a musician, or be it a painter or an architect? Or is the artist embodying in their metaphysic a benevolent universe and a human being that is capable of doing good, of practicing virtue, of achieving their heart's desire and goals, of finding love, of being lovable? And the measure of an artwork is how well that theme can be embodied in the actual medium of the art form, be it words, be it paint on a canvas, be it marble, be it sandstone blocks, granite slabs, steel girders, even dance. The ballet, for example, Tchaikovsky's Swan Lake, is communicating meaning. The whole art form of the ballet is communicating meaning, something about the human being and its ability to rise above difficult circumstances and soar and experience the lightness of being. Traditional Hindu dance communicates a different kind of meaning. Belly dancing, another. And whirling dervishes in the Sufi tradition are using a dance form to communicate something metaphysical through that form. What does Beethoven's Ninth Symphony, Fourth Movement communicate? Well, that's the famous Ode to Joy, of course. It communicates joy. The music bespeaks joy. And when you listen to it, you're uplifted. And when you analyze it, you can understand a bit better. But you don't need to analyze it to experience the joy and the upliftment of the music. So yes, it appeals to the ear, but it's been very intentionally created to convey the metaphysical message that there is joy in life. There is joy to be had, a joie de vivre. And his third symphony, the Eroica, was communicating something about the revolutionary fervour that Napoleon was exporting to Europe. Just in the sound of the music. And sometimes if you sit with some good music, as the music washes over you, it will evoke certain images that seem to go to music. And this is where the masterful film directors know how to match the right music to the right dramatic scenes. A metaphysical message is communicated in the theme of novels. Think of any great novel, Crime and Punishment by Dostoevsky. There's a message there. I won't try to unpack it for you. It should be fairly obvious from the title, yeah.
It's pretty intense.
Mm-hmm. War and Peace, another message.
Pretty intense again.
So when you're studying literature at school and you're learning about the theme of the book, you're having an encounter with embodied meaning. And then there's the style of the work.
It's such a wonderful gift to have, to be able to write and take people on a journey.
Mm-hmm.
Amazing.
And the best way to get a sense of what art is to try your hand at some. Try paint, try write, try sculpt, try build something, try speak, compose a poem. And then you'll appreciate what the poets do. Art is not just for an elite. In ages past, maybe people thought that way. But today, in this democratic age, art is for everybody. Art is to nourish the soul of everybody. Art is spiritual food.
It sure is.
It's the food that fires up your values and your purposes in life. It makes you feel strong and right and nourished in your spirit so you can live your life better. It's not utilitarian like a toaster is or a washing machine. You need that to toast your bread or wash your clothes. Practical. But art, you need to nourish your spirit so you have the right attitude and motivation to live your life successfully. Do you see? That's why it embodies a metaphysic. That metaphysic conveys the spiritual food, or the spiritual poison in the case of nihilistic art.
That's unfortunate.
Some arts make a mockery of beauty. Some arts make a mockery of human nature. Some arts make a mockery of human achievement. Some arts make a mockery of the universe.
There's a place for it.
Of meaning.
But I don't like it myself.
Oh, it can be very powerful art.
Yeah, it can be.
And you can judge this as great art because it's communicated its message eloquently.
Depending on the artist and how he executes it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But you might not like it.
No.
Mm-hmm.
I like uplifting art.
Mm-hmm. Pay attention to what you are attracted to. there may be a set of paintings that just capture you. But then when you get to know them better, like a person, after a few dates, you don't like the message they're conveying, their embodied meaning. You can recognize it. You can see them, the masterfulness with which it was communicated. But you say, I acknowledge the power of that art, but I don't like it. Or I acknowledge the power of this art and I love it. It's wholesome to me because not only does it attract me through my senses, it seduces me, it nourishes my spirit. It's good for me. I feel like a better, more whole person through having absorbed that art. And essentially that's it. Art seduces us through the senses towards an encounter with embodied meaning. And whilst there are other things that we could discuss about art, style and techniques and so on, that will have to wait for another occasion. Just hold the thought as a beginning thought that can open this field of study to you. Art is a seduction through the senses to an encounter with embodied meaning. Speak to you next time.